We're always looking for the next biohack, the next quick fix, the next shiny object, the thing that somebody else doesn't have. And that stuff only works at like the top of the priorities pyramid if you laid the foundation below it. It's not enough to be good at your sport. It's not enough to be loving practicing your sport. You have to love the entire process. And the entire process today means that you need to love to strength train. You need to be loving being able to be present with your nutrition profile. You need to love to be able to optimize your recovery. You need to love living that life. I know very well that people have Instagram accounts. They're on YouTube. They're getting inundations of emails and social media. They're getting information from every single angle. And I explain to my clients, I serve as your bullshit detector. There are a lot of different challenges when it comes to high performance athletics, professional sports here in America, but also the Olympic model worldwide. But I do think we are still training into pain.
Welcome to Fightful Nutritionist Podcast. I'm Shanti Koro, your host. We're here tonight with Dr. John Rusin. Dr. John Rusin is an internationally recognized strength coach, physical therapist, and injury prevention expert with nearly 2 decades of elite-level experience training MLB All-Stars, NFL All-Pros, Olympic gold medalists, and world-renowned holding powerlifters. Named a top 50 health fitness expert by Men's Health, he has pioneered a health-first, pain-free approach to performance that has transformed athletes and everyday clients alike. His pain-free performance specialist certification, PPSC, the fastest growing fitness education company in industry history, has received over 20,000 professionals worldwide since 2018, making Dr. Rusin a leading voice in sustainable health, injury prevention, and lifelong performance. He is the author of the book, Pain-Free Performance, Move Better, Train Smarter, and Build an Unbreakable Body. Everybody that works in the sport performance has some sort of call. I have mine. I'm sure you have yours. What inspires you to work with athletes?
I don't only work with athletes. I cut my teeth in the industry as a strength and conditioning coach for my first 10 years, working predominantly with high performance athletes. I'd say like 95% of the populations that I was working with were elite sports performers. But interestingly enough, my last decade in this industry, as I've been coaching for 20 years, it shifted a little bit more into health and fitness and longevity and more holistic healthcare and preventative healthcare. But I took those same principles from high performance athletics at the highest stages, and I pushed them into usable systems applicable for anybody, applicable for you and I, for our parents, and everyone in between. And I think that the principles that hold true on what pain-free performance is, it can speak to any demographic, it can speak to any population, and it can be a highly effective training method and system, no matter who you are, no matter what walk in life you're on, and then also no matter your goal set.
Do you have a favorite athlete and non-athlete story to share?
I do. One of my first Major League Baseball player athletes who ended up being the guy that got me started in terms of being into that sect right as I got out of my doctoral studies, his name's Mark Pryor. And this is dating myself now, but about 13, 14 years ago at this point in time, he was my first pro athlete. And at the time, he was coming off of like a runners-up of being the Cy Young Award winner in Major League Baseball, you know, the man. And the only reason that I got the ability to work with him is because I was personally training his wife at the time, and his coach was sick at 4:30 a.m. in the morning at the facility that I was working out of. And his wife turned to me really quick. He goes, "Hey, can you work with Mark today?" I'm like, hell yeah, I can work with Mark. And that was a great opportunity to say, I'm actually a baseball guy. I play Division I baseball myself. I speak your language. Like, I am one of you. Your wife is referring me to you. And that first session was really great because it really came to being a great relationship, because I ended up working with him in many different endeavors between physical therapy and sports performance, nutrition, recovery, and then having him as a huge referral source because of the belief in the work that I was doing with him. But that was really one of my first athletes that It was amazing because I'd worked with college athletes. I was a Division I strength and conditioning coach beforehand. I've worked
Mhm.
with high school athletes and everyone in between. But this was somebody like, I had their baseball cards growing up, and being able to cut my teeth and work into that segment of high performance athletics was quite amazing, especially in my sport, which is baseball.
What is the main error that you see making in professional sports?
There are a lot of different challenges when it comes to high performance athletics, professional sports here in America, but also the Olympic model worldwide. But I do think we are still training into pain. We are still force feeding too much intensity, too much volume, not enough recovery, and acting like there are certain exercises or one size fits all cookie cutter approaches that are going to work for everyone the same. And that's simply not true. I think that the human body is so unique because we are all different, unique structures. We have different bioanatomy. We have different physiology, neurology. And I think that we have to have more customized and optimizable solutions to be able to serve the individual at hand. Just because you play in the NBA and your position is center doesn't mean you're going to train exactly the same way as the other three centers on your team. We just need to be looking at a more individualized approach in order to keep our athletes and our clients healthier, because the whole fitness industry and sports performance industry is telling us the opposite today. They're telling us that, hey, if you play this sport and you're at this age and you have this goal, this is what you need to do. Whereas I'm not a huge believer in that. I believe that we assess the person in front of us. We, of course, look at their goal sets, but we also look at the things that are God given, the things that they have no control over, like their body types, like their joint anthropometry, like all these different variables that we need to know so we can train effectively around them and hopefully transfer some of that training into sports performance. But I do think that there needs to be a more individualized approach to athletes and clients alike, because not everybody is the same.
If you look at professional sport many years ago, it's changed a lot. And today, athletes have an entourage of people around them. However, if you look at statistic, it's not true for all sport, but many sport, especially baseball, we see a lot more injuries than before. What do you think about that?
It's a very interesting thing. We are in a world today that has more information than ever before. We have more university based education than ever before. We have strength and conditioning staff that have PhDs at the end of their names and doctors in front of their names. We have sports medicine staff that are, five, six, seven physicians deep. But we're still dealing with more pain and injury problems than ever before. And not just contact injuries, non contact injuries. We're dealing with an epidemic of controllable, in my opinion, injuries today. And I think that this is due to a couple key factors. The first factor is that our training has become more complicated. But many times, especially when I'm auditing training systems or programming approaches for some of these teams, we tend to skip the basics today, and we're chasing shiny objects. We're chasing the newest technology. We're chasing the newest exercise that nobody's ever done before. And we're trying to have the quick fix and neglecting many of the basics that got these guys there in the first place. We need to be going back into some of the basics of strength and conditioning and just basic sports performance, thinking about power, strength, body composition, cardio and conditioning, your metabolic engine, mobility, degrees of athleticism. And it's not always about trying to mirror the exact sports skills that you do on the field court or the stadium as we do in the gym. I think that that is another one of the mistakes that people make. But I think this all comes to a head because this is contrary to popular belief. But when you have a professional athlete, especially at the highest levels, they don't have a whole lot of time to train. You don't have a lot of frequency to train them. In the NBA, maybe you get 2 to 3 exposures per week to a basketball athlete, anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes per exposure. This isn't a whole lot of training time. A professional athlete in season is maybe getting anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes of overall training exposure during season. And then in the off seasons, many times the seasons are so long, their recuperative abilities of them, they just kind of shut down. They never get a true off season plan. And this leads to less training, less basics of the training. And this is where we see unprepared athletes going in and doing extraordinary things, but just not necessarily having the stamina to be able to withstand some of the long-term stress of whether it be their games, whether it be a training week, or whether it be their entire season.
Based on what you said, when athletes hire me, they expect a magic or a special sports nutrition strategy or some supplement that others don't know. When in reality, I've seen the athletes that perform the best, they have mastered the basic and they keep them with consistency rather than looking for a trick or biohacking or all those things. What do you think about that?
It is very prevalent today, is that we're always looking for the next biohack, the next quick fix, the next shiny object, the thing that somebody else doesn't have. And that stuff only works at like the top of the priorities pyramid if you laid the foundation below it. And without the foundations of nutrition, of training, of recovery, of mental and emotional health, we're not going to be able to actually get the most out of even some of those biohacks at the top. It's majoring in the minors is what I call it. And that's not a great place to start. A great place to start is to make sure that if you have a hole in your boat, you're making sure that you identify the hole in your boat and you plug the hole before you start to throw the water back out the side. We need to be able to go through these foundational basics and figure out what works. Because in my experience, similar to your experience, when you get an athlete in, the assumption is that everything's dialed in. They are probably less dialed in than my 45-year-old moms of three. They are probably less dialed in than my CEOs who are 20 years into their businesses. They are less dialed in than the vast majority of people out there with just some sort of health goal. When we get back to the basics across the triad of nutrition, training, and recovery, I think that's where we start to potentiate. And then down the line, we can get a little bit fancier with some of the more sexy strategies that we can implement with these athletes.
Where does it come from, the idea to write your book? Because actually book is more like a textbook.
Yes, the idea was natural because I run the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification, which has been certifying coaches, physical therapists, physicians since 2017. In the last 9 years, Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification has run over 1,000 two-day in-person certification courses all across the world. And in that time, we've amassed over 20,000 coaches who have been certified in the pain-free performance methods. For anyone who doesn't know, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's the most anyone's ever done in the fitness industry. I'm always trying to go out and do better for the people that are utilizing my information. We've done really great in person. We've gone all across the world. We've certified tens of thousands of coaches. But what's the next level of actually going out and being a service to the industry? About 4 years ago at this point, I was approached by a publishing house and they said, "Hey, our guy just took the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification. It's awesome. This needs to be a textbook. And I can't believe it's not already a textbook." And that was the impetus of trying to start up and going into the book route. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is a true textbook. It's 600 pages. It weighs 6 and it is something like you'd be assigned to in the university. Trying to come to completion with something like that did take almost 3 years of about 6 or 7,000 total man hours to get this out. But I think it came down to I wanted to make sure that these methods, these systems, these training strategies that pain-free performance had become known for in the professional sector was not only able to help more coaches across the world that maybe aren't able to come in person to us in our certification courses, they could get the strategies and the information in the system, but also that they could utilize this book with their clientele. If you're going to be a pain-free performance specialist, we saw it last Christmas. One of the top gifts from our coaches who are certified within our systems was to hand their clients a textbook and say, "Here's how we got the results, and thank you so much for being my client." We knew that that was going to be the potential with the book. It really just had a wider array of opportunity to get the information out to more and more people in different demographics.
What makes you feel inspired by the work you do?
I'm inspired every single day because I get to work with great people. I think that we do need to remember as coaches, we are in the service profession and it's a privilege to be able to work with another person. And I think it's the coolest thing in the world that we not only get to work with other people, we get to have relationships with these people and also do one of the most important things that there is in this world, which is give people the opportunity to be healthy, to be able to chase down their goals, to ultimately just live a better life via the things that we're doing in the gym. And I never take that lightly. And I've always loved to train. I've always loved the camaraderie of being on a team. I've always loved the ability to go into the gym and have that environment speak to me. Like even since, 14 years old was the first day I ever strength trained. And I remember that day because it was like, wow, like I felt like I was at home there. And I think that that is still what inspires me today. I'm doing a lot different than I did 20 years ago when I started my career. But today I'm still privileged to be able to work with people one-on-one in a more deep diving consulting model with my Dr. John Rusin coaching. I'm able to bring my education systems to coaches all across the world to be able to help them with their clients. And I'm able to come on a podcast and be able to be on social media and share my ideas with people that are usually pretty positive around trying to learn more and trying to become better career professionals. Every single day is a challenge because when you're doing something different than the status quo, which is just to go and coach people or to just be an educator at the university, when you're kind of like swimming upstream, it's a little bit difficult at times, but I think the opportunity is always the chase of what's next. In the chase of what next, if you can always continue to help and service your people that are utilizing whatever it may be, your coaching or your education or even your information, that's what keeps me excited to do it every single day.
In this time as era of internet, how do you navigate the information that arrive to your athletes and clients? I mean, the other day I was speaking to a professional soccer player I work with, and he told me, I need to be faster. I want to lose some body fat. What do you think if I reduce my carbohydrates? And that'll lead to a very long pause before to answer. How do you navigate with all the misinformation that are present today in internet?
Great question, because that is something that I start having day one conversations about. Every time an athlete or a client hires me as their coach, I say that I will be there as the guide to your journey. We will find a destination together. I will lead the path, and then I will bring you along with me. But you will decide where we go. I will just be able to get you there. But the one thing that I think that will get us off track very quickly is if we have random information coming in that could potentially take us off the path. And I know very well that people have Instagram accounts. They're on YouTube. They're getting inundations of emails and social media. They're getting information from every single angle. And I explain to my clients, I serve as your bullshit detector. If you're worried about something, if you're seeing something, if you're thinking, hey, how does this work within my holistic health plan? I don't want you to think that you need to change anything on your own. Bring the bullshit to me, and then I will be able to sift through it and just figure out if there is a little bit of a gem in there. Is there something that we can implement? Maybe it's something that I haven't really thought too deeply about, even though usually I have. And it's just the ability to open up conversation lines, because many times with my type of clientele, it's not just about, hey, do X, Y, and Z. Hey, do this training program, this nutrition plan, and let me know how it goes. It's definitely on pulse communications and coaching to the point where I become the real-time problem solver. But many times it's about being able to navigate all the information coming in that would be contradictory to my information and my plan for them as athletes or clients. And it's a constant flow because it's the reality today that what's the next supplement? What's the next training strategy? My favorite one is that I will just get an Instagram video sent to me. Hey, can we do this exercise today? Yeah, maybe we'll work it in eventually, but like not today because of this, and this is what we're going to do instead. And this is why we're actually doing this. It's a really great way to be able to navigate conversations and education, but it's also very, very difficult because if you don't have quality communications with your clients, they can get off track very, very quickly. They can get to the point where they don't know what to do, and this learned disuse of their own brain about, oh my God, like I'm going to chase down 5 different things that are going to contradict each other all at once. That's where the average person is today. And that's most likely usually why they don't get great results.
I think poor nutrition field and strength and conditioning field are a bit less, but the fitness is the Wild West.
I don't know, man. Like I would say, I look at being lucky that I'm in fitness and I'm a movement specialist and I'm a movement and training expert, because when you think about all the information that's out there on exercise today, there's a lot. There is a lot on training, strength training, exercise, cardio, whatever it may be. There's anywhere from 6 to 10 times as much information on nutrition. This is because not everyone has to move. Certainly, everyone doesn't have to exercise. Absolutely, not everyone has to train, but everyone has to eat. And because everyone has to eat, I think people have a more religious-based experience when it comes to their belief system and how they should navigate their nutrition. And this is difficult because for as much bad information as there is out there in the fitness and the training sector, there's just a volume of information out there in nutrition, and there's just more bad information. I think that's why with nutrition, you see these crazy polarizing views when it comes to nutrition for this avatar versus that avatar, or you're 47 instead of 48. This is the diet that you need to be doing, because there's just so much out there. And people know that it's a victimhood mentality of marketing, because if we can show somebody that, hey, you are this and you want to be here, we're going to show you exactly what you want to hear. And there's a million and different one tactics that can be taken, all because we know that we have to eat to survive.
How do you define yourself? A consultant or a coach?
Coach. I will be a coach every single time. I can be Dr. John Rusin, but I am still a coach, tried and true. And today, the way that I operate too is in a subclinical lens. Every once in a while, my clients that I'm already working with will have pain and injury problems. I'm able to treat and diagnose and do that. But my big belief is that we have the power of prevention when it comes to exercise and training. And I run an education system and a methodology that is based on a movement-based approach to being able to optimize. And that is in a subclinical setting, meaning that you don't need to be a physical therapist. You don't need to be a physician. You don't have to have an MD or a DO behind your name in order to run our pain-free performance systems. And I think that's liberating because, again, exercise is medicine, but it's also preventative medicine. And there's no deep dive diagnostic skills that we necessarily need in order to put people's basics back together in terms of their movement system. I still view myself as a coach. And I would even say deeper than that, if I really did resonate with one single thing, it would be personal training at this point in time. Because even when I was working with my athletes, I would have teams that I would work with, or I'd have a group training that would be happening. But a vast majority of my clients, it was a one-on-one setting. It was true personal training for athletes. Now it's true personal training for health and performance with different types of clientele. But I think deep down, I believe that I am a movement specialist. I am a coach. I'm a personal trainer at heart. And those are the types of professionals that I serve the best in the industry as well.
How do you see yourself in 10 years?
That's a great question. We have a lot of work to do. Whenever you write a 600-page textbook, it's not like the be-all, end-all, and hey, I'm done. I can retire after this. That's never the thing to do, especially when you put that much into it. It's allowing opportunities to go and chase down a couple different things. So along with pain-free performance, we also have the fastest growing kettlebell education company in the world, functional kettlebell training certification. FKT has been run over the last 4 years and it's hitting fire. We put a lot of effort and a lot of time refining our systems and our curriculum and being able to bring that to light, because in sports performance, but also in fitness, that is a huge tool that people just need to know how to utilize and yield a little bit more intelligently. And then 2 years ago, we launched the follow-up to the Pain-Free Performance Specialist Certification, which is called Lifelong Performance. Lifelong Performance is our health and longevity curriculum and our health and longevity training model. That is, again, in its infancy, only a couple years old. We've run about 100 of those certifications live and in person. We actually just did our first virtual online event in January, and that is going to take, another 8 years to get up to the powder keg that pain-free performance has become. I look at my next 10 years as being able to continue on with my training systems, refine them, get them more clear, more concise, more usable, more applicable, but then just being able to generate stronger curriculums, especially in the spaces that I think are the most advantageous. I think that functional training is huge. Pain-free training is extraordinarily important, but health and longevity, I believe, is the future of not only sports performance, but also fitness. We're starting to see the popularization of people trying to be healthier out there. I think even in the last 1, 2, 3 years, I'm seeing a big swing and a big wave of health and preventative medicine come through. It's a good thing for us because I've been focusing on this for the better part of the last 2 decades. And I think that just refining those systems and being able to speak to those particular systems to be able to say exercise actually is medicine, but here's exactly how you have to do it in order to actually get the right dose. That's what's going to keep me busy, I think, for the next decade or so.
Absolutely. Instead, let's look back. If you could talk to your 20-year-old, what would you tell him?
Man, at 20 years old, I was still playing Division I baseball, and I was still trying to chase down the dreams of being a professional athlete. A little bit of background quickly on me is I'm the son of Dr. and Dr. Rusin. My mom was the Dean of Health and Human Services at the university that I got my doctorate from, Damon College. And my dad was an athletic director of 27 schools in the Western New York area. He was a 36-year athletic director at Williamsville Central School Districts. At 20 years old, I still didn't know exactly my path that I wanted to do, but I knew exactly where I wanted to be, which was going to be in the gym. I enjoyed academics. I really enjoyed being able to compete and play baseball. That was still where my focus was. But at 20 years old, I was competing. I was still good. I still wanted to chase down my dream, which was to be on a Major League Baseball field. But I knew, I think deep down, that it was going to take me a different way. Probably like 19 or 20, I realized that I actually loved training for the sport, whether it be batting practice or taking fly balls or just being in the weight room, better than I actually liked the sport itself. And I thought that was very interesting. And I think my dad, seeing a lot of coaches through his systems over, his years as the athletic director, he saw that I would be a coach. There's no question that I would be going down this endeavor. But at 20 years old, I think I would have slowed myself down a little bit because I think that there was more to, I got in very quickly. I was coaching a lot as I was playing. I was doing everything as rapidly as possible because I wanted to skip steps. I wanted to get out and I wanted to get in information. I wanted to get education. I wanted to get experience faster than anyone else. And I think that did have its advantages, but sometimes I think that I was never a 20-year-old kid that was just focused on one thing. I wasn't just focused on baseball. I was focused on baseball and personal training people and strength and conditioning and trying to, make it to med school and do all this stuff. Whereas like all that stuff would have came down the pipeline if I would have just been, a little bit more patient and present. And I think that at 20, that would be the thing that I needed more of. And I would argue that today, at 40, I probably need exactly that same thing, being more in the present and just operating and enjoying the ride.
Let me ask you this instead. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, doesn't matter, who would they be and why?
The first one would be my father. My father passed away when I was young, and he was a big influence on what I do today, but he never saw what we were able to do, like he didn't see a textbook being sold all across the world. He didn't see a certification course. He didn't see me speaking on stages, with all these people. And he didn't see me as a father. I have a 10-year-old son, Cameron, and he's a great athlete and he enjoys training. And it's like the second coming. That's really cool. That would be my first one, is that 20 years later, being able to have a conversation with my dad, sitting down and saying, hey, here's what we're actually doing. The second person would most likely be somebody like an athlete that I think that was like super influential, just like in my upbringing. Like I think like a Michael Jordan would be very, very interesting because I continue to be very intrigued by him in multiple different endeavors. As a child growing up, I had the Jordan shoes, I had the Jordan jersey. I was watching the Jordan tapes on TV. I thought he was the best. And I was very focused in on him, especially with basketball. But then I saw as he continues to run businesses, run empires, buy teams, do all this stuff and continue to evolve, it all came from essential spots. Sitting down and probably thinking more about that with him is like, hey, how did you take the traits of being a great athlete? And how did you transfer them into different endeavors in your life? How did you transfer them into different areas like business, mentorship, performance, all those different places? Because essentially that's what I look at doing with myself, but also with a lot of the clients that I mentor as well. That would be probably the second one. I don't know if I have a third for you.
If I look at the world of sport, I come from Italy. My country, the national sport is football, or as you call it here, soccer. I've seen over the years so many incredible, talented soccer players. My favorite was Ronaldo Nazario. When he started to run, it was like a turbine. It was unbelievable, but he just liked to play soccer and didn't like to train. And as great as he has been, there's nothing compared. He would have the mentality of Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. Based on that, how do you think is the mindset the limiting factor for athletes and people alike that go to the gym?
That's a really interesting topic because I was just having this conversation last week with my son's speed coach. And my son's speed coach has NFL guys in there working. He's got Major League Baseball players and Rookie of the Years in there in the offseason training this year. And we had an interesting conversation about this exact thing. It said, it's not enough to be talented. It's not enough to be good at your sport. It's not enough to be loving practicing your sport. You have to love the entire process. And the entire process today means that you need to love to strength train. You need to love to be in the gym. You need to be loving being able to be present with your nutrition profile. You need to love to be able to optimize your recovery. You need to love living that life if you have any chance of making it into Division I athletics and then to the pros and then the top of the pros. That needs to go because everyone's talented and everyone loves their sport, or most people love their sport, but it's not enough. It's like, that's the biggest missing link that I've always seen with the athletes that I work with. I have an anecdote in the Pain Free Performance book talking about one of my athletes that I worked with about a decade ago, prepping for the Australian Open. One of the best athletes I've ever worked with, had the best tennis coaches, had the best nutritionists, had me working strength and conditioning and physical therapy, but she was locked in when she was on the court. But as soon as she left the court, everything fell apart. It was like Snicker bars were in the bag, skipping meals and then eating fast food later on at night in secret. And then when it came to strength training, it was just like looking at her watch, going through the motions, not pushing anything, not actually engaging in the process of learning about your body and the way that you could function. And the only reason that, now looking back on it, that she never made it to that number one ranking, that she never won the Australian Open or the US Open or any of these big Grand Slam tournaments wasn't because she wasn't the most talented. She absolutely was. It was because all of those other areas of the trifecta were not there. She was not engaging in all those other ancillary areas that could amplify her ability to be a God-given world-class performer. And it's really sad when we see those types of stories because we talk about potential. Everyone has this potential, but it's not only physical potential. It's your mental and your emotional health and your ability to make quality decisions and repeat them and to be able to be consistent with everything that it takes in order to not only make it to maintain a career at the highest of levels. That's a big reason that we see that athletes that make it into the professional realm, they're only lasting anywhere from 2 to 3 years at the top. Major League Baseball, you see guys in and out, in and out. You see football, 2.8 years is the average career in NFL football today. You see it all over the place and people always go, oh, they must have got slower. They must have got weaker. That's not what it is at all. They got to the point where they couldn't sustain that level. And it was most likely because of training, because of their nutrition, because of their recovery, and really having nothing to do with their sports performance. You can only perform if you're available to perform. And in order to be available, you need to be a true pro in the rest of your life and the other 22 to 23 hours a day.
It's interesting that you said that because years ago, I work at the time he was number 3 in the world in tennis and he didn't make it to number 1 for the exact reason you're saying. And he was overworked and underfueled. Unfortunately, but he has great talent. It happens.
It does happen. And if you want to be stressed out as a coach, go work on the PGA Tour, go work in professional tennis because coaches don't just get paid salaries. I don't think a lot of people know this. Coaches are highly incentivized to make sure that their player wins because when they take purses, because it's an individual sport, that's the only way the coach gets paid. And I've never been more stressed out working in golf or working in tennis because watching your athlete that you're working with 8-10 hours a day implode on national TV. And then you're like, oh man, I'm not getting paid at all. It was definitely not for me. I was like, that was my last professional job in tennis, working with that athlete. After that, I knew that there's probably something different for me that I needed to do. And that's kind of what pushed me into education and then kind of like moving more and more into fitness and health versus high performance athletics. But just as I say that, I get more and more pro athletes that are reaching out to me now today in order to get healthy again and train again, especially in their off seasons. Things come full circle, but I think that it is a different beast out there if you are indeed coaching in those areas.
In combat sport, is the same thing. The first 5, maybe 10, they make money. All the rest is broke, and most of the purse goes to the manager here, there, and at the end of the day, it's very hard to make in that sport.
Yeah, it's kind of like going to Vegas. It's like, hey, if somebody wins, somebody loses, you're not betting on the game, but you're literally like incentivized to do everything humanly possible to make sure that you can facilitate a chance at performing at an optimal rate because, everyone's all in on it. But I think that's what leads to high performances, but also kind of high stress as well.
High performance or high prevention? What
Yeah.
comes first?
I think we just need to be able to most likely get somebody prepared to high perform. Many of my athletes, they have it within them, but I think that there's a lot different between preparing, practicing, and going in and being in front of, 40 or 50,000 people, having the emotions be high as your performance needs to be high. I think that is the art of competing. There's many people out there that don't have the physical tool sets, but they have the mental tool sets. They have the art of competition on lock. And there's opposite ones out there that have every tool in the world, but they don't know how to compete. I think that it's not only practice, but it's a mentality of being able to be in the mind gym and being able to ready yourself to be able to make sure that you can rise to the occasion because it's a whole new beast.
For example, Cristiano Ronaldo, and when I look at him, I see someone that was not extraordinarily talented. He doesn't have the talent of Messi or R9 I was talking before, but he has this incredible mindset and work ethic. And I think what makes the difference.
It's interesting because we have our local baseball team, Milwaukee Brewers. I live about 60 minutes away from Milwaukee in Wisconsin here. The last 3 seasons, they're putting people on their Major League Baseball roster that are 5'6", 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". It's a whole team of guys that are under 5'9", and we're like, my son's 10-year-old baseball team has bigger guys than this. And it gets you wondering. You're just like, man, what is the X factor for somebody like that? Clearly they're strong. Clearly they have speed. But I think that there's something more to it. I think the athletes that have had to withstand doubt their entire lives, the athletes that had to come up when nobody else believed in them, they had to prove people wrong. They had to be the last guy picked. They had to develop later than everybody else. They had a chip on their shoulder that they learned how to develop the competition model of mindset. And I think that we're going to see a rise of this because, I was just having a conversation today before I went on this podcast with one of my baseball coaching clients. And we're talking about, hey, you don't have control of this, but you never want to be the early bloomer. You never want to be the biggest kid. You never want to be the strongest kid, especially when you're anywhere from age 10 all the way to age 15 or 16. What you want to be able to do is be the kid that has to rise up, the kid that's probably like not the worst on the team, but certainly not the best, the one that continues to have to refine and work harder and to be able to figure out ways to be successful because they don't naturally have what it takes to be dominant. And we're seeing this more and more in every single sport that, again, you don't have necessarily control over when you hit puberty, but the later bloomers, the people that have had to grind it out for years and be doubted, they're the ones that are ultimately so tough that their X factor becomes their mind. Their X factor becomes figuring out ways to compete. And they have the things that nobody else has. Even the guys that are 6'4", 215 pounds, 9% body fat, and running like the wind. It's that they never learned how to extract that deep level of competition out of them to figure out how to win in a area where everything is at their advantage.
Instead, if we talk about fitness, how do you see the industry evolving?
You're not going to like this one, and I don't think I like it very much either, but I think that the fitness industry is very similar to the sports performance industry, is that we're really gravitating towards quick fixes. we're gravitating towards pills and potions. And it's just not that simple. Fitness, or I would say health and fitness or health and wellness industry, man, we have some interesting new things that are at our disposal today, different than even like 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that we are forgetting that we need to be eating well. We need to still be strength training and cardiovascular training and mobility training and doing those basics. And that recovery or passive modalities put on top of active modalities, that's in the wrong order. I think there's big perseveration in health fitness industries today that all you need to do is recover. Just recover. Take these supplements, eat these fake health foods, lay on the massage chair, cold plunge every single morning if you're serious, get in the sauna, maybe go for a couple walks for 15 minutes and you will be optimal. And it's just not true. I think the mainstream media is getting better, but I think we're leading people into disuse. We're leading into, hey, it's okay, just do what you can. But people are morbidly obese. They have multiple chronic health conditions. They have a lack of functional lifestyle. They are having mental, emotional, physical, psychiatric issues due to a lot of preventative-based measures that they could be taking control over. And we are, as an industry, saying, hey, do less, do less. And I'm not saying that everyone always has to do more, but we need to do just as much to try to climb out of these holes, but we need to do it smarter. And it's not as easy as like just strength train, just lift weights, just walk. That's not going to reverse our chronic health conditions today in the industry. And I think that we just need to get a little bit smarter. And I hate to be like the bearer of bad news here, but I would argue that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were far healthier than we are in the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s so far. And that's really sad because we're actually seeing that a lot of the things that we've been putting our time, a lot of money and energy into are not really paying off because we're, again, lacking those basic foundations.
In my country, when I was growing up or teenager, I never saw an obese person. Now, Italy, mostly is the South, have the highest rate of childhood obesity in Europe. And that's because people move less. When I was growing up, we had ultra processed food, but nothing compared like today. And, before to walk, I knew two things: how to cook and how to hit a ball.
Yeah, it's a multifactorial issue here that we're talking about. So I don't want to say too simply, but we have a movement problem. We have a nutrition problem, not only quality, but quantity. And we also have a mental health problem as well, where a lot of these conditions are exacerbated by the previous two: non-quality nutrition and non-physical exercise or activities, even the baselines being met. I think that is a vicious cycle, and it's a flywheel that leads people into chronic health conditions more than ever before today.
I think it all comes to self-care, I think.
Self-care is really important. I think ultimately people want to be healthy, but they need to have an action plan, but they also need to take responsibility for their own health and wellness. We have coaches, great coaches like yourself, if you want to look at nutrition, or me, if you want to look at training, but somebody has to ultimately come to us and say, hey, I need to change. I need to make a difference. I need to be doing something that is going to put me in the position to save my own life here. And that is tough, but people need to step up, take responsibility. And it needs to be said that we have more control over our health than we've been sold. We are not victims. We are in the driver's seat. We just need smarter systems, more basic comparable systems that we can just get done consistently for the rest of our life. When it comes to quality nutrition, when it comes to regular exercise that is well-rounded and holistic, this isn't a quick fix. This is something that when we ingrain this inside of your lifestyle, I fully expect that people will be able to do this for the rest of their lives and needing to do this for the rest of their lives, because that's how we actually unlock our ability to have health and longevity long term. Not only living longer, but living at a high quality of life and being able to have physical autonomy late into our years. That is a lifelong endeavor, which is taking responsibility for your own self.
And the time have changed quite a lot. I remember my dad was telling me this story that he was stuck with a car, and my great-grandfather went behind. It was like me, 165 pounds. He lifted the car from behind and moved it.
Wow.
And I can tell you another story. I was like 20. I went to the mountains and, we're doing a game with my friends. Let's move this donkey. And I couldn't. I was in shape. This little 13 years old came like nothing. We change so much as a society, but I think we need less consultant and more coaches.
Yeah, I think we're in deep need of guides to people's journeys. And I think that we need support, we need communication, we need belief, we need trust, and we need people that are servicing clients for the right reasons. And I think that there's a host of people out there that are waiting for a great coach to come in and being able to lead them to the promised land of health. But we also need to better prepare our coaches in order to actually be meeting clients where they're at, meeting people where they're at today, which is most likely not elite sports performance athlete, but a real person in real life with real responsibilities, with families and jobs and stress and eating out 3 to 4 days per week because, they're running carpool. I think that bringing it to the reality of what we're dealing with today, we need to be thinking about less about the optimal or what is the optimal of what's possible. And we need to look at being able to move those major items in the right direction and be able to have a lot of momentum being built by that. And then once we can do that, it's like it all gets easier. Maintenance is a lot easier than going in and rebuilding the entire machine.
I remember when I did my dietetic internship, the clinical rotation was rough. I can tell you that. It was very rough. Seeing people intubated and 300-400 pounds was rough. And I remember asking myself, how do you get to that? I don't understand, still don't understand. Is there something that you would like to add to close?
I think, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you having me on. But as complicated as we want to try to make preventative based exercise, it doesn't have to be. And one of my goals with pain free performance across the board was to be able to take the complex, make the complex simple, make the simple actionable, and allow people to make the actionable automatic within their lifestyle. I think that just being able to have follow along systems and being able to have a more well-rounded approach to be able to be more accessible to the way in which we're able to have those micro wins turn into big wins, turn into macro wins. I think that is the biggest thing forward. I want people to get started, but getting started and being on the right path, facing the right direction, I think it's so important. Just getting started doing something, it's fine. I guess it's quote unquote better than nothing. But I think that when people are ready to get started and trying to rebuild their health, rebuild their bodies, get to the point where they're able to chase down performance again, then we have to do certain things correctly. And that is the goal of being able to intelligently strength train. That's the definition of pain-free performance, is being able to live well, but also have your performance be at the epic rate no matter your goal. But there is a process to it, and it doesn't have to be super complicated, but it also can't be simple where you're not doing the work.
That was a great answer. And I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Ciao, everybody.